If you would like to earn CPE credit for listening to the show, visit earmarkcpe.com/FPA. Download the app, take a short quiz, and get your CPE certificate. Finally, if you enjoy listening to FP&A today, please go to your podcast platform of choice, click the subscribe button, and leave a rating and review of the show. And now, on to the show.
From Data Rails, this is FP&A Today.
Welcome to FP&A Today. I'm your host, Glenn Hopper. Our guest today is Len Mcfall, a seasoned finance professional who has been navigating the world of FP&A and business intelligence for over 20 years. Lenny's career has taken him on a journey through diverse industries, from telecommunications to healthcare, customer service, and retail. He is a principal of finance at Windstream, a billion-dollar telecommunications and managed services company, where he is responsible for board and senior leadership reporting of strategic metrics and KPIs. I'm excited to have Lenny on the show because, like many of us, his background in finance is heavily influenced by BI. He's worked in areas including strategic planning, organizational leadership, financial reporting and analysis, cash and asset management, and P&L ownership. He's more than just a numbers guy. He's also a tech-savvy professional with a strong background in data and technology. His toolkit includes Power BI, Tableau, Adaptive Insights, Azure, SQL, and of course, Excel, using them to transform raw data into actionable insights. Lenny, welcome to the show.
Glenn, thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
I guess I should probably go ahead and get this out at the beginning that you and I have worked together at a couple of different companies. We've known each other for, it's over 15 years
now. Yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah.
So it's like old home week on FP&A Today. Is I'm bringing in people that I've had the pleasure of working with and getting some insights.
Easy mode.
But that's right. So and I guess the other caveat I'll give at the beginning is Lenny and I both tend to speak in paragraphs rather than bullet points. We should have like a safe word here, or a word that if one of us is rambling, the other one can, maybe a hand gesture for the people who are getting the audio only of this.
Like just like
just plaintive
you tell me the word and I will heed it, because you're right. I'm not a bullet point guy. I'm a paragraph guy.
Let's go parrot. You want to go parrot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Parrot. One parrot for wrap it up. Parrot means, stop right now, kind of like a pan in the aviation business. Yeah. I'm with you. We're going to be succinct and
we've already gone long and we haven't even gotten to the first question. So
let's rock and roll.
So, Lenny, can you take us through your career journey? I want to hear about some of the key milestones and really the maybe where you had those points where it kind of shaped the rest of your career. And I'm really thinking about, starting out in FP&A and moving into more and more of a business strategy role as your career progressed.
Probably the first thing I would say is that I think we can all agree, all of us that are in this business, that's FP&A itself is becoming synonymous with business intelligence. And honestly, weren't we the first business intelligence? We've always been working with data. We've always been trying to simplify and present data in a meaningful way to people who might not otherwise be literate. That's changing, right? The top half of every organization now is financially literate. We're bringing a lot more to the table than just month-over-month variances and revenue modeling. My career has been a little bit, is all over the place. Is that a technical term that you can use for a career track? I've been in telecom for the bulk of my career. A little bit of nepotism got me my first telecom job as a buyer of leased facilities. Did that job for a couple of years until, honestly, I met you and you were in crisis for somebody with, how should we say it? Somebody with a forward-looking mindset toward capital planning. Maybe you can enlighten me here, but there was a process involving a printer and reams and reams and reams of paper on a daily or at least every other day kind of basis. And that was somehow how we managed our capital assets? Is that all you?
Pretty much. So my procurement guy actually had and kept a paper ledger
Yeah.
and printed out every single invoice. And, a lot of these invoices look very similar and have similar numbers on them. And that one ended up, I thought that might be the last thing I ever did in FP&A and in budget management back at that point was when we had an error that represented about 12% of our total annual capital budget that we were, heading into the end of the year and getting ready to present to Goldman Sachs was involved. It was to the investors, and we were under a lot of pressure to hit our numbers. And by the way, we thought we were spot on. Now that we've reached the end of the year, right before Thanksgiving, it was.
If that was only the first time I'd ever experienced that. Yeah, I love it that you say 12%, and only those of us here would gasp at that. There's portent only for your core audience. I think when you say 12% variance, it's a big number. But yeah, so that was, so taking that job with you was my first sort of foray into planning and finance. And, big surprise, I never planned to be in finance. When I was a little kid, I didn't have a career track. I went and got a nebulous business degree, right? Followed that up later with a attached master's degree. There's a matter of a coin toss odds that you'll end up in planning. After you went off to do a different thing, I had the exact same crisis that you had, an unexpected, multi-million-dollar capital line item that I failed to plan for. And almost cost me that particular position. After you have that experience, I think everybody should have to, travel through that gauntlet because it puts you in a position to recognize, first of all, don't manage to the number, manage the business. Had we done, had any of it at any point, you're never going to be wrong managing the business. If the business doesn't live up to your plan, then, just go back to the drawing board and do it again. Don't try to force the issue, I think is the point I'm making here. And then, beyond that, every other experience I've had in financial planning and analysis throughout the 20 years that I've been doing this now is be right, be consistent, understand what your source of truth is, and make sure that you're able to communicate that truth across the company. If you have other people that are sharing the data that you're using or who are making business decisions based on your source of truth, make sure that you're communicating that data to them, make sure that they have access to that data. And most importantly, make sure, a lot of things are reliant on logic for us these days, right? So make sure that those people have logic that you're using in order to get to the answer that you're delivering. I think the greatest source of stress in my career has always been ad hoc questions where an executive had a pencil in a meeting and was not able to foot some group of numbers that that was being presented. There's no worse feeling than thinking you're wrong. So designing your models, designing your reporting to be centered against fixed, trusted databases and tables is critical so that you can say, well, whatever math you're getting, let's figure out how you're wrong, as opposed to let me describe to you how I blew it from a core, whatever foundational data standpoint.
Yeah, and that's everybody loves to talk about AI, BI, and analytics, but it starts with you have to have that foundation of so you're at enterprise level companies. I've spent most of my career in the SMB space, where the first thing I do when I come into a new client or if I'm taking over as a CFO somewhere is let's fix the chart of accounts. So you would assume at enterprise level, they've got their chart of accounts pretty squared away in most cases. But even then, when the bigger the company, the more data sources there's going to be, the more, sales and marketing may have their own set of numbers they like to use, and finance and accounting uses this, operations uses this. So the first step you have to do is kind of come up with that data lexicon and get everybody nodding their heads that this is our source of truth for this information, so that when the executive is sitting in a meeting and they've got some numbers and they're told one number from sales and marketing, another from finance, maybe another on the same metric from ops. Well, everybody could argue about, well, this is why we calculate it this way. But if you're going to label a metric, you've got to have everybody using the same variables.
Absolutely. I would say 40% of my job is just touching base with the people who either use or own or curate all of the data that we use across our organization. Because the fact is that we're in a position now where we have, like you said, a myriad data sources that we never had before, and we're thinking of ways to use that. Let's talk about big data right for a second, right? I'm in a business where GIS data comes into play, weather data comes into play. You can start using very small, very granular transactional data to start making statements about your customers, right? Marketing is starting to use a lot more intel about not just who our customers are or what industry our customers are in, but where are they, right? What has been their experience moment to moment with our company? Because that data exists. For example, I could tell you how many outages any customer has ever experienced, right? In our, say, network, for example. And that information alone is moderately useful to be able to tie that information. But what if you don't have that data tied to billing? You could be talking about a batch of customers. You could be talking about a set of data that's recognizing a customer, or, whatever you want to call it, a location that no longer exists or that's no longer billing. Right out of the gate, you're wrong if you don't have all of your sources of data tied together, all of your logic described and laid out and clear for everyone to use. The most important thing that I do, probably, like I said, 40% of the time I spend making sure that we all agree on logic, making sure that, that all of our sources of data are, or the ones that I use at least, are true and trustworthy.
I'm thinking about the amount of data you have that's just available to you, and kind of the data maturity levels of these companies in different industries. I mean, working with in all these sectors, how does the financial reporting differ? Maybe, because I know you were in a PE-backed healthcare company, right?
Yeah, high touch too. Yes, yeah. High touch private equity, and that's think about 120 doctors' offices. Think about how doctors have managed data up until a decade ago. This is big hand cranking file rooms. Not to even talk about, privacy and that kind of stuff. It's very difficult. Just the ETL process for the work I did at Crossroads, for example, involved, when I got there, I spent a Tuesday and a Wednesday once a month manually downloading, the monthly data from individual point of service terminals. And then I would transform that data using power pivots. And then I could commence to building, my 100 tab, P&L. Go ahead.
But you ended up there, and maybe we come to this in a minute, but you ended up actually building a decent team there, and you actually had data scientists.
Yeah. So that was, showed up, and there was a cave, and we were doing, look, fundamental FP&A can be done with sticks and rocks, right? We all kind of agree that we that it's not a complicated thing, but it is labor intensive. And so, I got there, it was sticks and rocks, and was very, very rudimentary. And, we, I don't know. It's very interesting. I don't know if you've continued to have this experience through your career, but I feel like every time I show up someplace, it's a target rich environment. And that's exactly what kind of happened with Crossroads. I showed up there and they were like, please, for the, please help us so that we can, so that we can just get, they were delivering financial reporting 30 days after close, 30 days. And we chopped that down. We were delivering on day 8, within a few months. I got there and it was a matter of, and look, I'm a Luddite. I will be the first one to tell you that I'm not super interested in ETL. I'm not super interested in where the data lives, what the, who owns it. I just need to, my goal is always to have access to it. And I know, the nice thing is that that it's a thing that you only have to suffer once. And so that's what we did. We suffered once. We got, we hired, the first thing we did was hired sort of a contractor who worked for us part-time to develop an ETL process so that we had access to all the data that was sitting in all of our point of service machines. And then we hired a double master, she was an MBA and what do we do? An MDA? She was a master's in data science, data analytics. She had 2 good degrees, and she was a Power BI person, and it was a matter of, we started building automations on day 1, standing at a whiteboard, and we were peeling time out of the process very quickly, and of course, making it essentially error proof. We weren't doing, any of the sort of crazy, we won't get into, managing the balance sheet, but for P&L and for planning and analysis and for modeling, it put us in a position where we could model, which we really could not do that before. We could answer ad hocs in a timely manner. And I think again, sure, I'm in paragraph land, but the power to me of access to data is the power to answer ad hocs quickly. Like I said, financial planning, you can build a model out of anything. A very basic stuff for modeling. The point being, you can model with Excel and a stack of papers if you have to. But when it comes to real-time decision support or ad hoc analytics, you have to have access to good data or you're not useful.
So you basically just described, if you've seen the data maturity scale where it starts out where, we're doing ad hoc reports in Excel. There's no notion of self-serve anything. Mm-hmm. Everything is reinvent the wheel every time there's a new report request. And that is a tough place to do FP&A. But I kind of carved a career out of being the guy that goes from, takes the company from low data maturity to reducing that close cycle time from 30 days. And that's pretty standard in the SMB space. It's kind of an accepted thing, 30 days. But think about how much less valuable your financial data is if you're not even looking at it until 30 days after the fact. I mean, you can't.
Yeah, it's not useful. You're attacking pain points from think about cost for a moment. You're attacking cost pain points way past the time that it's useful, right? Or certainly has a diminished usefulness. Yeah, if you can't get out of the gate, you've got to have, whatever. It's fundamental stuff. The world closes in 3 days now. That's just the way it works. And then you can start to talk about, you can start analyzing the month. On day 3, that's when I plan to do it. And, any place that's, I don't want to put anybody on blast here, but if you're not closing by the middle or the end of the 3rd day, you've got an opportunity, I think, regardless of the size of your company.
obviously you want that close time to be as short as possible, but now there's this concept of, the real-time close, which I know we can't, tick and tie everything with the books and everything, but sort of, there's software out there that helps with it because people say, I don't want to wait till the end of the month. So what data points can you provide? And this is more of like a RevOps kind of reporting requirement, but it's, there is that expectation. And if if companies have some level of visibility throughout the month in between the close, that's just more valuable and supports decisions.
That's not something that it's in the conversation, right, in my life now. But it's interesting to me because I say this all the time when I'm talking to people about building, about modeling, about anything, about the real time close thing. I think if in a world where human beings don't exist, it makes a lot of sense to start jumping the gun on certain metrics. But I work with sales a lot, and those guys won't close. You're never gonna. There's no way. And I've tried it. I'll tell you, I've tried it with a couple different firms. I've tried to model forecast on run rate, which you cannot do from a timing standpoint because I don't know, they're human beings, man. We can forecast in a lot of other ways, but just not on run rate, not early, I guess is my point.
I have never gotten a pipeline report from sales that I believed.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm so happy to talk about that because it's something that flashed through my mind as I was going on my last rambling, which is let's set this aside. Modeling complexity. Maybe there'll be some time for us to talk about that in a minute. But how often do you catch a forecast from a sales organization that's even 50% right? Never. I never have. And I'm not, if there's some folks that are listening, they're in sales organization, I think they own it. I think they know it. They are overly optimistic or overly cynical, depending on, I don't know, which way the wind is blowing. Frankly, it's very difficult for them to forecast. In the meantime, and I do it all the time, I have the most rudimentary model, which is, hey, let's look back at the pipeline. Let's look at close rates based on stage from my CRM. Let me put those in 5 buckets, right? Of weights, right? And let me build a weighted pipeline. And from that weighted pipeline, I'm going to build a forecast for this quarter. And let me say something, month to month, I'm within a dime. I'm within 10%. And never have I been beat, ever, not even close, by the sales forecast, which is a forecast, presumably from the people who are directly involved in the pipeline moment to moment. That we're literally going to them and saying, tell me what you're going to sell this month. And they're wrong every time. And so this is sort of the power and importance of this is a very rudimentary, very simple model. Imagine how close you could get if you had a lot more data to throw at it. And that's another question. Maybe you couldn't get any closer at all because, again, we're talking about people and companies who are out there doing business and dealing with the same stuff that everybody else is dealing with. Maybe 10% is as good as it gets. And maybe it doesn't make sense to, I don't know, apply, a weather-based regression model to your electric bill to see, but maybe it does. You just don't know until you do it for a couple months in a row, right?
Yeah. And it's, thinking about that, I feel like the sales pipeline report that comes in, it's based on a lot of just emotion. It's based on, they really liked me. I'm pretty sure they're going to close this.
It is.
And
it's absolutely qualitative, person to person. And yeah, they can't know. But you can take that data, and this is small data. This is not, this is not a huge, you're barely sort of statistically significant. You can still prove in a hunch, or you can still at least call shenanigans on a forecast. I don't know how many times I've seen a forecast come in for number X, and I'm going, I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but that's not mathematically possible.
Right. Well, and the mathematically possible thing. So, I mean, I keep, as we're having this conversation, I think about like the qualitative part that where people guess wrong, they read things wrong, and that jacks up the pipeline. FP&A Today is brought to you by DataRails, the world's #1 FP&A solution. DataRails is the artificial intelligence-powered financial planning and analysis platform built for Excel users. That's right, you can stay in Excel. But instead of facing hell for every budget, month-end close, or forecast, you can enjoy a paradise of data consolidation, advanced visualization, reporting, and AI capabilities. Plus game-changing insights giving you instant answers and your story created in seconds. Find out why more than 1,000 finance teams use DataRails to uncover their company's real story. Don't replace Excel, embrace Excel. Learn more at datarails.com. This is something you and I have both preached for, is the role of data analysis and BI in finance and in the decision-making process. And when you are doing FP&A, then the value that you give to the organization is not, obviously being able to model and all that is key and great, but it's the communication of what you created and being able to, and more is getting automated from the bottom. You have all this wild amount of data, and then you turn that data into information, you log it, you capture it, and catalog it, put it in the data warehouse or whatever. But then what do? You have to turn that information into knowledge. So now I've consolidated, I've made a dashboard. Here's your quick look. But then where we start now, because there's been so much automation at the lower level, is okay. We take that knowledge, turn it into wisdom. In that now I'm adding my value as a FP&A expert to tell you so you can make strategic decisions based on all that, what we've gotten to hear. So.
Yeah. What good is there? You can have 100 Tableau graphics, and they're no good if nobody can understand them. I feel like we're in the infancy of what is a future of real communication up to the business owners. Because, like I said, it's like you said, the point I think you're making is information is useless if you can't communicate it to the people who need to use it to improve their decision making. And look, business is a hunch, right? Business, I think you and I were talking about this the other day. We were talking about, how, AI, it commoditizes experience, right? So businesses run on hunches. So I have a hunch that a particular initiative is going to work. And our job as FP&A folks, and more importantly, business intelligence folks or decision support people, whatever you want to call it, is to buttress that hunch, is to prove that hunch. So yeah, communication of all of this stuff is absolutely the key, the crux, the future. Because honestly, I'll tell you, I experience a lot of decks. I see a ton of slides and of readouts and reports, whatever you want to call it.
So many pie charts.
Look, man, I a lot of pie charts. Yeah, too many pie charts. But hey, man, if I will say this, we all have an aversion to pie charts for whatever reason. I'm being a little tongue in cheek here, but a line over stacked bar can be just as worthless as a pie chart if it's not telling you anything, or if you can't communicate what it's showing. I don't know how many times I've seen a stacked bar or 3 bars side by side with two trend lines and a logarithmic curve, and it's like, this is a useless graphic. If you have to spend 12 minutes telling me what in the hell, pardon my French, is on this graphic, you've wasted my time, and you have not brought me any value, frankly. And that's something that we all, as business intelligence people, decision support people, financial planning and analysis people, we have to guard against, which is bringing nonsense to the business, because it's easy to get down in the weeds and to not, you can have you can recognize the greatest, you can have the greatest epiphany, but if you can't communicate it clearly to the business and to the owners of the business, or the folks who are responsible for any given business unit or initiative, it's not useful intelligence. It's not useful BI. It's a waste of time.
I think where one of the areas I wanted to cover is you mentioned this at the top of the show. I think you called yourself a Luddite, where you don't want to be a tech person, but the nature of the business, the way it's changed since you and I have been in it, is you have to be a tech person. So you have to go, first you have to learn how to write a SQL query so that you can get access to information. And then there's another tool and things you have to learn. But to add value to your job, you have to become, you have to grow your BI chops, because it's, the value that you provide is going to come out of that. So I think it's tough when you go to school for finance, and then, oh, by the way, it's just expected that you can code a little bit. And certainly you can write a little Python, right? And,
Right.
and certainly you can write a SQL query, or,
And the answer to that question is yeah.
Yes, because I don't know if you can't do that now. I mean, unless you've got the coolest drag and drop interface in the world.
Is there anybody in our business that can't at least dip an Oracle database using SQL? Right? To me, it's kind of like typing. I expect, I don't know. I think my kids missed it generationally, but I feel like there's ninth graders out there. You and I took keyboarding classes in ninth grade, right? Or, we learned how to no-look type, and our kids are learning how to code. I think.
Looking back to when you first started your career, I understand we have to learn all these different environments and different coding ways and everything, but the nature of what you even had access to and the tools that you had early career, walk me through sort of the evolution of what you're using. And you don't have to specifically, name brand. I mean, it's fine, but what technology you have now compared to what you had when you first started, and maybe some ways that that's facilitated the work that you do. Or I want to say not facilitated the work, because the work is still challenging, but maybe it eliminates some of that, the grind of just, being lost in Excel and hammering through. And
first and foremost, sort of, ETL, getting your hands on any data from any system, is much easier now than it was in the past. I think, when you and I were doing this back at the turn at the millennium, we were ODBC2 to our, whatever our financial was at S-Base. No, I don't even think you can. I don't know what it was, but,
Great Plains,
I think. Yeah, Great Plains. That was it. Into an Access database. And we were sort of learning GUI, right? We were building queries in a GUI, Microsoft GUI interface. And we made some powerful tools out of that stuff, and changed the way that our company was able to manage its, to say the least, complicated capital planning situation. Because when you've got little pieces of capital all over the country, it's difficult. And I think we did great works with very little. That said, that was a time, at that, so the difference between then and now is that then even that rudimentary access to financial data was still sort of, good access to financial data. And the difference between then and now, the real primary difference in my mind, is that it's not just financial data that we have access to now. We have access to sales data, marketing data, we've got access to the larger world of big data. We've got access to, in telecom, maybe it's switch data, maybe it's net traffic data, maybe it's, we have access to correlating data that enriches the finance data that we've always had access to. And so that is a game changer, because now we can start making much more powerful guesses about, what's happening with our customers, what's happening inside our business, on a cost basis, on a sales basis, all of these things. So to me, the big difference between 20 years ago and now is that we are able to join to data that we didn't have access to before. I suppose it was probably there. It just wasn't as easy. I suppose we could have, if we really wanted to, figured out a way to get a hold of switch data, engineering data. The good news is that it's easier to get connected to multiple disparate sources of data. The other news is that it moves us closer to IT, which traditionally, right, IT has sort of weirdly fallen under the provenance of the CFO, right? Back before IT was its own thing, back before CTOs existed or CIOs or whatever you want to call them. I think an opportunity that we all have going forward is, trying to find the correct interaction between IT and business intelligence and finance, because it is kind of a brave new world, right? IT sees the kinds of things that you and I are doing in business intelligence, and they're going, that looks an awful lot like IT. That looks an awful lot like information technology. Why don't we own this?
God, and there's a whole debate around that about where should data science live. And then, of course, I'm a homer for finance. And I think, well, to your earlier point, we are the original business analysts. And that's why I'm so mad. How did sales and marketing just like a rocket ship take off in using machine learning, and finance and accounting has been left in the dust on that? And I think we're getting there more now. And I think now, though, you're seeing more machine learning just being built into other tools, other software that we use. It's just different ways to do the forecasting. But I kind of was miffed for a long time that I felt like, the best machine learning resources were being put to sales and marketing. And but I also argue all the time that
you want the real answer.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think I know what you're going to say, but yeah, let's hear it.
Marketing professionals are like weathermen. Who was using big data first? Meteorologists. Why? Because they don't know which way literally the wind is going to blow. And when you're in the business of being close, and you don't have, again, sort of in more, on a more serious note, if the benefits of your activity are a little softish, then you're going to employ tools that add a little bit of hardness to the benefits that you are delivering to the business, or, suggesting that you're bringing to the business.
And since we're dogging on people, sales and marketing, I don't trust their pipeline. I've never I've been frustrated, but never actually angry, ready to punch someone in sales and marketing. IT, on the other hand, I just come to a meeting with IT just ready to fight.
Yeah.
I'm just, let's go.
It's the nature of the relationship. I'm not sure why it's that way. I think it's that way because, I don't want to blame. Look, the way that IT gets done, dev cycles and sprints and all of the things associated with, scrumming and agile approaches and all these things. If IT spends so much time trying to manage throughput for limited resources and managing intake and that kind of stuff, that's frankly, finance professionals, we don't have time to participate in your intake process because we're beholden to the close timing, right? We live period to period. If you can't help me this week, then you can't help me, man. And often that sets up an immediate problem, an expectation versus reality problem when it comes to getting work out of IT. Not to mention, they often don't see. Well, I think that IT sometimes sees finance-centered business intelligence folks the way that finance-centered business intelligence folks see market analysts.
If somebody wants to be at the forefront of FP&A starting out their career, what are you telling them that they need to study and focus on right now to be
Yeah, I
successful?
think, well, I do think you focus on analytics. You focus on, you find the bleeding edge in terms of tools and processes that are being used right now. And, to the extent that you can be interested in that, be curious about that, and stay in front of that. Because the fact is that, you'll get, financial literacy obviously is critical, but from a business intelligence standpoint, if you're getting your education, the business intelligence part, or the analytical part of your work, is going to be more and more, as time goes by, more and more centered on your knowledge of the industry, of your particular business. And you're not going to get that knowledge until you're in the business. So go study tools, go study the technology, and show up to whatever business you choose, or whatever business you get hired onto, with a toolkit that you can apply to that business and that business's industry and customers right out of the gate. I think, a very, the days of, I don't know, like the days of MFA and that kind of stuff. I don't think that's a useful educational track now. Especially if, like I said, if you want to be in the business of business, you need to embrace the tools first and foremost. And I know that everybody's doing that. Every undergrad is coming out of their business undergrad program with knowledge of they've got Power BI, they've got Tableau, they understand the basics of data and database structures and that kind of stuff. That to me is the bare minimum. And if you want to make yourself, if you want to elevate yourself, get curious about that stuff and get out on the bleeding edge of that stuff, because that's what everybody's looking for.
I look at it like this. The role of the CFO, and then therefore all the departments under the CFO, have changed significantly from just to say 20 years ago, maybe a little longer, but 20 years ago is probably accurate. If you're a CFO, you probably are a CPA. You came up through audit and you went through controllership. And the most important thing for the CFO to do was be able, and this is still important, but I'm going to get to that in a second, was to be able to close the books and speak to the numbers. And it was very backward looking. It was, we're going to close, everything's going to be ticked and tied, and that's it. So what's happened in the last 20 years, what used to be the CFO is now what the controller does. So the controller has elevated as well. But then on the CFO side, you had to lean in a lot more to the FP&A, to the forecasting, to the strategy. And you could, and I used to say this because I bounced around a lot of industries as well. I'd say, I don't care what the widget is, just drop me into finance and drop me into finance and accounting. I'll figure it out. Numbers are numbers. But so now I think with the evolution of the role, you have to have the basic accounting and understanding of just the chart of accounts and how everything works and how the three financial statements flow together. And you've got to have the domain expertise. Well, the training to speak the finance lingo and understand all the components there. You come in, you have to understand statistics, analytics, BI, and the tools, because are you going to do this all in a calculator? Are you going to do it in R? You have to be able to operate in the environment that the company's using. So now you come out of the gates, you say, okay, I have a master's degree in finance to understand all this. Now I have a master's or at least coursework in data science and statistics. And now I know enough. And now I've got to go out and apply that in the world. So it's a huge ask right now. But one of the things that I think is going to make that easier is the whole world of data science used to be blocked off by SQL at a minimum. Hopefully also you write Python or C++, whatever your whatever your programming language is. But now, what I'm seeing early days of generative AI is natural language becomes the new programming language. So as long as you can get, and it's in, we're just a matter of a couple of years away from this, but all of your databases, all of your big tools where you're handling this data are going to have an interface that is, let me talk to my data and let me pull it this way.
Mm-hmm.
So, but now I'm rambling, but,
Yeah.
but, you have to, just like in an example I always use is if you are going to be talking about the income statement, you need to know the difference between net income, uh, you know, net income, EBITDA, all the different points there. Otherwise, you don't know what you're talking about. Now you're going to have to understand the fundamentals of statistics to understand what you're talking about. But as far as the coding, that's not going to be a barrier. It's if you know and you can interact with data through natural language, and you can, you know how to test and see if your seasonal auto-regressive integrated moving average forecast is. I can't believe I spit that out
Nice.
without stumbling, but to be able to understand how it works and what you've asked the AI to do. I think maybe that's going to level the playing field a little bit, but I think it asks for the same things that you said, that what you should be studying right now. Maybe you don't have to know the coding, but you're going to have to know the rest of it.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. You got to chase, like, what's the minimum education that you need? What's the minimum toolkit that you need? And that, like you said, that now is, SQL, Python. You have to, understand the tech, right? You have to understand it. And then, the next thing is, I don't like to use this because so many people use it these days, but, sort of the next step of programming is, prompt engineering, which I really don't love that phrase, because what it suggests to me is that, and maybe this is the case, but what it suggests is that there will be, that generative AI and interaction with generative AI will become codified just like any other language.
So I'll tell you, and this is funny, this is someone who just for a group wrote a guide. Just within the last 24 hours, wrote a guide to prompt engineering. However, I get angry when I hear someone talk about, I need a prompt engineer, or I'm going to be a prompt engineer. Or I think what's going to happen is it's actually going to move in the other direction. And within the next 12 to 24 months, saying I'm a good prompt engineer is going to be like bragging that you're really good at Googling.
Yes.
It's like, because that's the nature of these large language models, is that they interact like humans. So it's more of an approach to how you interact with them than it is specific prompts or whatever. I think of when I work with generative AI, my default is, this is a very bright but very green intern.
Mm-hmm.
It can do anything, but I got to put guardrails around it. And I got to say, listen to me.
Yeah.
This is what I want you to do. All right, Lenny, we've reached the time of the show where we're going to learn a little bit more about you. I bet we've known each other long enough that I probably will know what you're talking about when you answer this. But the standard question we ask is, what is something that most people don't know about you?
Right.
We could turn this into a real confessional. We could say, what is something I don't know about you? But maybe we stick to.
I'm an open book, man. Here's something that might surprise you if you can see the video of this podcast. I don't play the guitar very well.
Lenny's sitting with 3 guitars behind him, hanging on the wall here in his office.
I think you know this about me, but a thing that a lot of people don't know about me is that my background is my childhood was a countrified, farm-based northern end of the Appalachian Mountain Range kind of childhood. So a lot of people don't know that I grew up in the woods, like the very deep, dark forest. No, nobody's. I don't strike people as the kind of guy who killed for food every winter, as a child. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Killed
You
animals,
didn't
that is.
carry that with you?
Huh? Say what?
Yeah. Killed animals. Yeah, important
Animals
distinction.
with food. I ate animals, deer.
And that didn't carry into your adult life. You're not a big
I'm not. No, it
outdoorsman
didn't.
hunter.
No, it didn't. I left when I left the woods. I essentially left all that behind.
All right, Lenny. Next question.
Mhm.
What is your favorite Excel function and why?
Can we talk about? I mean, it would be more on theme for us to talk about the shortcomings of Excel at this point, don't you think? Can I?
Okay.
Can I complain to you? Are you a sympathetic ear when I say, why in the world can I not get an easy quarter to date function in Excel?
I've given up on any sort of like getting any in Excel, getting anything to today's date or
Look,
trying
man,
to get count days
if
or
I have
whatever.
to nest offsets and matches, I'm gonna jump off the bridge. It's the most annoying thing that I do, and it's funny because I don't know if you've experienced this. In my career, I don't do it anymore. I kind of got past the trying to not do the hard stuff at some point pretty early on in my career. But I can remember times when it was like, you know what? I'm just not going to put quarter to date on this report and see if anybody cares about it. And of course they care about it. The first thing that somebody sees when they see a financial document with a stack of periods on it is, can I get quarter to date? How about quarter over quarter? How about year to date? How about same period last year? How about against end of year last year? And it's like, because there's no good function. Every time that happens, it's like, what, again, my mantra is, if you only have to do it once, it's not really, it's not a problem. Otherwise, I just use sum if and many various lookups and nested if statements. You and I broke the nested if statement back in the day, back when it maxed at 5 nested if statements.
I'm just getting started at 5. I'm just getting started at 5.
That's nothing.
All right, Lenny. Well, thank you for coming on the show. I guess last question: how could our listeners get in touch with you? How can they reach out to you?
Well, it's nice because I'm old enough to have one of the earliest invitations to Gmail, so you can just send it to Lenny Mcfall at Gmail. My actual name, LennyMcfall at Gmail, is the best way to reach me. That's the only mailbox that I monitor. So. And
All right. Well,
thank you so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun. Obviously, it's always fun to hang out with you and talk.
Thank you, Lenny, and thank you, listeners, for tuning in.